wanted to return the maps, you could zoom in, you could pan,
you can return
you
maps, you can zoom in, you can spot, all those exciting things. Also, I guess the point that the data and the results that your users are used to getting today through browser are going to be the exact same data and results that they would get through your system, not kind of similar, we don't have every field available. No, you can get all of this stuff back, and custom data as well. So basically, this is my non-technical guy's attempt at a flowchart. But what I did do is show kind of what your app does and what the RiskMeter does and responds with, and then what yours does. So it kind of the back and forth of what happens. In general, there's two calls that you make to the RiskMeter. So you can see I have the client app, which would be your software on the left, and the RiskMeter on the right. So generally happens is you start with an address that you send to us. Okay, so this address to us. The thing it does is it actually looks at what we call an address dictionary, which essentially, and it scrubs the address, it cleans it up to CAS certifications, and it's all about basically every single address in the U.S. in there. Okay, so it checks to make sure real address, it cleans it up, and looks to see if it can match that address against this address dictionary. Okay, and if it's a good match, it geocodes that address, and it returns that back to you. So it says, okay, I got a match to 100 Main Street. Here's a cleaned up version. It's a single match. Is this what you want? So you pick the candidate that we're going to match it against, and you say, okay, yes, that's what I want. Now I want the disk host. I want the flood zone. I want the storage. Resend that as your second request, and we return results. Okay. A couple things is that you can see is over here on the right. It looks for a match, and you'll either get a single, multiple, or none. Okay. So if you think about it, I'm sure all of you who have dealt with addresses in insurance know we get really, really dirty addresses from people. So software is some art into how it matches against addresses, and it's this address dictionary. People get the suffixes, they forget the prefixes. If there's a town that's got a North Main Street and a South Main Street, and someone says, well, I'm 100 Main Street, what do I do? And in those cases, so the software does some guessing, but if it's ambiguous and I really can't zero in on what you mean because you have me enough information, you can get candidates back from us. Okay? It says multiple, and there is that if you get candidates back, you can actually get a list of what the candidates are. So people will, you can get the actual address candidates back from us and put those in your application. So as I said, let's say that someone said they put an address of 100 Main Street, Anytime, USA. And it turns there's no Main Street, but there's a South Main Street and a North Main Street, and 100 on each. Get back candidates that say, I have 100 North Main Street, and I have 100 South Main Street. What did you mean? And then you can present those to the user, have them pick that from a list, and then tell us which candidate you want the answer for. That's what I mean by multiple. So either you get a good match, you can get multiple matches, or occasionally we say, I don't have a match for that address. It's either an awful address, or in some cases, we haven't mapped a new street or a very rural street. Okay, so something to keep in mind when your application is there are going to be times when you don't get an answer back, and you have to think about, from a process standpoint, what you want to do. Add anything to this, Ryan?
That's just an important step there. You know, you're given an input address, and like Dan said, it could be garbage, and we're going to give you back the CAS certified address. And at that point, you just want to make sure, is this the address I meant? So, address validation is a big part before you move on to actually order your RiskMeter reports. And Dan, I'm sure you're going into that next.
I am, but that is really important. What we're saying is that one of the reasons that you go through this step, we've had people say, well, if I give you an address and you get a single match, can't I just, this next step? I think we've done a code so you can, but we don't recommend it because if someone gives you really something crummy, it matches to something that's not really what you meant. So that's in the RiskMeter, when you enter an address like that screen that I showed you before, why we show you what we're matching it against, So you can say, okay, I just want to make sure that what we're matching against is really what you expected.
Some people wonder, why is it a two-step process, and that's one of the reasons that it is. So you're not ordering reports for an address that you don't want.
Right. And I don't have slides in here, but here, and I'll elaborate for a second. I talk here about it includes a match level. There's a field, so a couple things we give you back. So we clean address, we actually give you a scrubbed version of what we're going to match against. So that's called address cleansing or CAS certified addresses. CAS is a USPS standard, but we're going to give you back the cleaned up address that we're matching to as the post office wants it. So it's a good clean address that you could store in your policy. Okay? We all give you this match level we call a geo result. That tells you geographically how well you can find that address. I'm going to go into this, but I guess I showed a little bit. So as I said, there's two steps that happen here. One is we scrub it, and we find candidates. So in general, we'll find pretty much any address as long as it's a true deliverable address. But there are cases where we'll say, yes, I know that address exists, I have it, but geographically I can only match it to, let's say, a zip plus 2 or to the code because I can't find that street. So a good address, but geographically it covers large areas. So we're saying, from a geographic standpoint, we can't say how far you are from a flood zone because represented by that geo result could be a whole code. All right. So, again, you should expect that there's going to be a small percentage where you're not going to get a match back, or we're going to say the geocode isn't good enough to give you an answer. Okay? Now, there's a little foot, and before I go on, along with that, we can also buy report, like let's say flood zone versus distance to coast, set you different levels of geographic acceptance. For example, for distance to coast, people might say, a zip plus 2 is a good enough match. Whereas for something like a flood zone, you might say, look, if I don't get at least a street match or a parcel match, then I don't answer. And we can set that by each report view. Another thing that's mentioned down here, it says if you have lat longs, you can skip the first call. So really, the whole point here is you send us an address, it scrubs it, the output of it is a lat long, and we're saying, okay, now that I know the lat long, I can these reports. Of other systems or other software you're already getting the lat long from, you can skip sending us the address and go right to this. I think you have to call a different procedure or something, but fundamentally, you can skip this whole first part of the process. And so, the RiskMeter, let me just show that again. Let me share a web browser again. On the RiskMeter website, let me log in again. When you enter an address, let me just enter here. And so this is what I was talking about. We show on the left address that was entered, and on the right we show you what we matched it against. So people are confirming, yes, that looks like it was a reasonably good match. You can see in this case it put the zip plus 4 on. It capitalized everything. That's probably the address to CAS certified things. We just talked a little bit about geocoding too. And so when I was talking about the match codes, we call it a geo result. You can see an output page that says geocoding accuracy is S8 most accurate. This link brings up a document that explains geocoding and what the different match codes are. I highly recommend you look at this because this is an important thing for people to look at. And all I'm saying is the easy place to find this is right in the RiskMeter after you put in an address, this document right here. Okay, so let me go back into my thing here again. Stop sharing that. Okay. Next thing. Okay. All right. So there's basically two ways to interface with us, what we call string to string and string to XML. So in string to string, you send us an HTTP string, Okay, the element in it, and then you back HTTP strings as results, and you parse out the information out of there. So here's an example of an input string where you can see blah blah staging risk meter. That's the URL, I guess, function to run, and here's the address. Okay, city, state, zip, and password. Okay, so those are different tags that are documented on support.riskmeter.com. So string to string means you send us in an HTTP string, you get back an HTTP string. Now, the newer thing that people seem to be using us for is string to XML. So in this, send us in an HTTP string, but then you should get an XML document out. So people seem to be used to this much more now of getting the data back as XML rather than the strings and parsing it out. You want to add to that, Ryan?
No, just that most customers now are using the XML. I would say 80-90% or more. It's easier to manipulate the data, store the data, just manage data from a higher level.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so and after I show you this stuff, I'm going to have Ron go into the support portal and kind of show you around with the different tools that we have to help people get started. So first of all, the support.riskmeter.com, which I'm going to have Ryan show you, is kind of where we point people to learn about the specifics of the integration process. It has VB code. He's got this neat thing, the string generator, that if you can, it can actually work with your demo account, tell you what the XML or the strings in and the XML out are. So you can put in an address and say, okay, if I wanted this distance coast, what does that request look like? And it documents all the different parameters. Is a really robust for people who want to integrate. I think the thing that makes it different from the competition is that we've been through this so many times. It's documented. We have best practices. We know what to do.
And we have real-time examples, too.
Yes, we also really set people up with a test account. So it allows you to test against a live server. So you have a robust test environment that can mimic your online account exactly. So if you have custom data, we can load in custom data. After you've gone live with us, if you want to test new things or new features, say, hey, obviously we don't want to go live yet, but we need to be able to test. We can set up your test account to match the new settings that you're going to have later. The only thing we say is, look, it's a test environment, so we're testing in it too. So occasionally we may need to boot, or what happens at 4 in the morning, to expect us to get someone out of bed to reboot the test server. Okay. But it's getting, this is their slide, it's getting much more. We have multiple test servers now because we're just doing so much volume with our customers. We have so many people